Okay, good morning, friends. We're continuing the conclusion of Sefer Chavetz Chaim, Chelek Beis, or maybe you could even say this is Chelek Gimel. This is the storybook section. The Chavetz Chaim wrote 3 chalakim: Hilchos Lashon Hara, Hilchos Rechilas, shiurim, stories, scenarios. So the first scenario, the Chavetz Chaim said, I already told you yesterday. The story was the guy came, he said, I want to buy this sukkah. He didn't give you a down payment. Meanwhile, another guy came by and he bought it, and now you want to blame that guy for convincing you to sell it to him. No, you're not allowed to say his name. Tzir Sheni. You see, Ruvain wants to go into a business partnership with Shimon. Shimon doesn't recognize what Ruvain's all about. But you recognize Ruvain that he's not concerned for someone else's money because of his bad nature. You need to tell Shimon, do not go into partnership with him. Even in this, you have to be very careful. Says the footnote, be careful, my brother. You have to be very careful if somebody wants to go into a partnership with somebody, he doesn't recognize the guy, but you know the guy, he's honest, but he's not on strong financial standing. You want to tell the potential partner, why are you going to partnership with this guy? You know, he's not that well to do. The Avan Gadahu, that's a great sin. If you say words that, if they're heard one from another, to damage their friend physically or distress him, hareza lashon hara. I'm telling you, in my limited experience, when it comes to shidduchim or when it comes to pledges in shuls, people who are well-to-do have a harder time fulfilling their commitments than people of average or below average financial standing. They have a harder time keeping their word. That's just the reality. So just because somebody is not of strong financial standing, that doesn't mean he won't be a good partner. You can make the case, adarabba v'adarabba. If the guy is of strong financial standing, he likes his money a little bit too much. Okay, anyway, I just thought I would share that with you. Not everyone, but beware. This is not similar to other inyanim that you need to reveal. This is not like someone's dishonest or someone has a health issue. Someone who's not of strong financial standing, it's not a chisaron. If you tell the guy that someone's a thief, you're saving him from harm. Just because the guy doesn't, he shops in the cheap stores and he doesn't wear designer clothing and he drives around old car, that doesn't mean he's not a good partner. No, he's probably just an honest guy. But what if the guy already went into partnership with a thief, and you know exactly what he's all about? If you know that the guy won't accept your words as absolute fact, he'll only be concerned. That is, from now on, he's not going to rely on him at the cash register totally. He's going to be looking at the camera. In other words, he's not going to fire the guy, but he's going to be alert. Then you have to tell him. You have to be very careful not to miss out any of the other details that are mentioned in Sif Aleph. But if you see that your words will be very accepted by the listener, and through this it will cause actual loss. That is, he will be mavatel on his own the partnership, or other damage. It is asr to reveal to him. But if you have a guy, and I don't know, he's not a thief, but he's the kind of guy that he owes his pledges to the shul for the last 6 years. And whenever it comes to money, he always has a way of, delaying, finagling. Then even though you don't know he's a thief, you have to be very careful before you advise Ruvain to go into partnership with Shemaim. In other words, or in Shidduchim, whenever there's a case where you're not sure, should you tell them, should you not tell them, you don't know if it really means that it will shter the marriage, that might be true, maybe you shouldn't tell them. You also have no right to Redt, or to be the one to advise that this is a good idea. You have to be very careful not to advise Reuven to go into partnership with Shimon. If you know any harm that could come through their partnership, let's say the guy's poor. So even though if you cannot go and tell Shimon, don't go into partnership with Reuven, he's poor, you also can't tell him to go into partnership with Reuven, knowing that Reuven is poor, because that might actually affect the partnership. And certainly if he's not that reliable. Meaning, that even in a case you can't go tell Reuven that Shimon is not really doesn't really meet his needs. You're not to go tell Reuven Shimon doesn't really meet his needs, but you also can't advise Reuven to go into partnership with Shimon if you know Shimon doesn't meet his needs. But maybe you'll be a good partner. How do you know? You're right, you don't know. So therefore it is usher to advise Reuven to go into partnership because it might be a bad idea. So for example, you can't go harm someone. It's usher in many situations because of rechilas. In many cases, you can't go tell the guy, the girl 4 years ago, she had a very dangerous situation, maybe she had to take meds for some kind of emotional issue. You can't go tell the guy necessarily if she's okay now and it's within reason that her behavior was reason, but you want to read the shidduch. You're not allowed to. If you know that someone has a condition that might shter a marriage, you don't know, 25%, let's say, I don't know the numbers, 25%, this could have a real negative effect on the marriage, it's asur to read the shidduch. But what do you mean? I just heard a speech on Torah anytime about someone who made up a story and talked about how important it is to read shidduchim. You're right. It's very important to read shidduchim. It's very important. It's a great mitzvah. The Marsha says one of the 6 questions you're going to be asked, Lachar Meva Esrim, Asakta B'Peria V'Rivya, did you try to read shidduchim? The Marsha says that. But if you know information that could shter a shidduch, you're not allowed to read it. What if you know? Yeah, I think so. That's what he's saying. Could go and shoot, for example. What if you know that this was for your kid, you would run away from such a guy or such a shidduch. Isser gamerhu liyayis as chaver b'zeh. You're not advise your friend to do this. Dezehu b'chlal lifnei iver loy sitein mechshal. Sha'amru chazal shaloi litein loy eitza she'eno higenes loy. But we have to rephrase that because this is a very sensitive and delicate tightrope. What? In other words, if you know that if this was noigea, your son or daughter, you would never want them to go out with somebody who had that issue because it could realistically shter a marriage. It is asur to read the shidduch. If you do, you're over a lav in the Torah. Now, but you have to be careful. When we say if it was noigea you, it means if that kid was your child. Because that kid, maybe that kid in his set of circumstances, this is the type of shidduch which would be most appropriate for it, then you could read the shidduch. Okay? So when we say if it would be noigea you, it doesn't mean your child. It means if the child that you are reading the shidduch to would be your child. There are many people who are nichshal in this because of their negiyos. V'hu avain palili. It is an astounding sin. Ki chimud mamin ma'aviram alav ta'iraisa, because the desire of money causes them to violate alav in the Torah. So you have to be very careful before you give advice. Don't give bad advice.